forum, and then they ran a story on A9 the next Tuesday. Durham had released these findings on Friday, and they waited till Tuesday, and they buried it, and then they just said, well, there was some information added to Durham's earlier findings. Now, this is an old trick that journalists play when they don't want to cover something. They say, well, that's old news. This isn't really news, so we don't have to play it up. This is what the main so-called mainstream papers did when Bill Clinton's bimbo gate was exploding, and Jennifer Flowers came forward and said she'd had an affair with him for years. They all said, well, we're not covering it during the presidential campaign in 1992 because we covered that previously. But you know, when a Republican trips and does something, they glom on it for years. I mean, they never forget. And so it's so one-sided. I can't emphasize enough, Jim, how far left the media has gone. I mean, I used to work at the LA Times. I was an editor there for 7 years, a news editor. And I saw change in those years from being a liberal paper to moving toward outright left-wing activism masquerading as journalism.
Yeah, it is remarkable. I have over the years been a guest lecturer at a number of journalism schools around the mostly the D.C. area, but a few elsewhere. And there was always this very upfront and adamant virtue that was put forth that we are not biased, that no human beings, of course, are totally free of bias, but our coverage is bias-free. And they made a point of saying that in their classrooms. And at the time, it's been so long ago that I didn't have a lot of examples to show to the contrary, and really emphasize that that's the way it's supposed to be. That again, a responsible news journalism, as opposed to the op-ed page, requires that you be genuinely balanced in your coverage. Something seems to have changed. Granted, I haven't been called back in quite a few years to speak to any of these schools, but is that what we're turning out, that people should engage in this euphemism, advocacy journalism?
Yeah, it's really a problem in academia because the people coming out of the journalism schools and getting other degrees, I got 2 degrees in political science. I didn't take journalism, just a few courses. But the education was so liberal that this marinates the people coming out and going into journalism. They see through a left-wing lens, and they don't think there's any validity to the other side. So they don't think they have to provide the other point of view. I ran into young reporters at the LA Times who I tried to balance stories. I mean, they come in and it'd be entirely one side, and they say, well, what did these other people say? Can you get their point of view too? And they'd say, what are you trying to do, inject politics into this? No, I'm trying to keep them out. I'm trying to get both sides of the story, and you're only showing one side. That's bad journalism. And I remember they complained about me to my superior, saying, oh, he's trying to inject his conservative views into this article. And actually,
and what did these superiors have to say about it?
Well, they tended to back me, even though they were left-wing, because I made the case, I appealed to their pride as journalists. I said, look, we're a serious newspaper. People counted us for the truth. And we all have distinct points of view, but you know, the reason the LA Times is respected is people read it and figure they're going to get the facts. And so they said, okay, well, and then I'd win, you know. But that's the same paper, though, that I had to run in myself, because I wrote an article for National Review about Justice Rose Bird. This was way back in the late 80s. And Justice Rose Bird was a Supreme Court Chief Justice of California who overturned 52 straight death penalty cases. And I wrote a piece saying because of that, the voters were going to send her packing and 2 other liberal Supreme Court justices, which is exactly what happened in the next election. But it turns out my editor was a friend of Rose Bird's, very close friend. So I had just been promoted in the newsroom, and she called me in, slammed me down, and busted me back to the news desk and said, "You can't write for a publication like that." And I said, "Wait a minute, your husband just wrote a piece for Playboy magazine trashing the Mies Pornography Commission. And he's identified as a bylined Los Angeles Times reporter. And you have no problem with that? And I'm an obscure news editor?" She said, "Well, that's different." And I said, "Well, how is it different?" She said, "It just is." And so...
what does "it just is" mean? I mean, I'm bigoted, I'm biased, and therefore we're not talking about this?
Yeah, she couldn't explain it because she couldn't defend it. And so she just said, "I've got the clout. You go back to the news desk because I'm your boss, and you can't have that point of view." And, it was even worse than that. I pointed out that Times reporters had written for Mother Jones magazine, and I said that, that's a far left magazine. She goes, "No, it's not.